Anxiety disorders, such as panic attacks, are amongst the most common mental illness in the United States, affecting 1 in 8 of us. Fortunately, we have options. One is using drugs, and the other is psychotherapy, or using the mind as medicine. Talking about drugs, when a patient suffers from an anxiety attack or a panic attack, we can give them a drug like Xanax, which can in turn calm the patient down. So what is Xanax and how does it work? To better understand how drugs work in the body, let us look at this model. Our body is made up of many receptors depicted in the balloon-like structure on the slide, and it gets constantly bombarded by different chemicals to give you a positive or a negative response. For example, when a patient takes Xanax, it binds with another chemical in the body called GABA, which binds to a receptor, decreases the heart rate, and calms the patient down. Epinephrine is another drug or a chemical in our body that, when it binds to its own receptor, can increase the heart rate. Viagra is a drug that some people take, binds to its own receptor, and, well, you all know what it does. The other aspect that I mentioned is the mind as medicine, or psychotherapy. And I must mention that we have data that meditation can release the same chemical GABA and calm a patient down. The power of thought can release a chemical in your body, bind to a receptor, and calm a patient down. Another aspect of psychotherapy is getting to the root cause of what is causing the anxiety or the panic attack. It could be something as simple as jealousy. Vices such as jealousy, pride, ego, anger, lust, or what I would call latent diseases, is not something that only affects people with anxiety disorders, but society as a whole. This is something that's echoed by the editors of BBC Science Focus in their current issue of the top 100 breakthrough health discoveries. And in there, they talk about the need of addressing and managing the mind. William James, the great American psychologist and philosopher, has said, the greatest discovery of any generation is that a human can alter his life by altering his mind, or by managing his mind. So how do we manage the mind? How do we alter the mind? Before we get deeper into it, let us first talk about the true potential of the mind. I want to share with you 3 examples, one of which is my own. The first example may sound like science fiction to you, but it is not. There are several studies out there, and some of this work has been done by Dr. Dean Ornish. More recently, in the February 2015 journal, Cancer, Dr. Linda Carlson of University of Calgary showed that in breast cancer patients, when they teach them mindfulness techniques, they can decrease the rate at which their DNA was getting eroded. Now you could say, I do not see my DNA, I want to see a physical response. Many of you may have heard of the Tibetan monks. Tibetan monks in 40 degrees Fahrenheit can wrap wet sheets of cloth around them and dry them out. An average human being would go into uncontrollable shiver and could potentially die. So do you need to be a monk to practice managing the mind or control your mind? No, this is something you and I can do. When I was a kid, I was exposed to the concept that fasting can help manage the mind. I've done all types of fasting, but let me share with you one very interesting one. It went as such. On the first bite, on the first day, I was allowed to eat 1 bite. On the second day, I would eat 2 bites. On the third day, I would eat 3 bites of food, so on and so forth, until 15 bites on the 15th day. And then I would go back down from 15 to 0, and this would last for a period of 30 days. Do you think I did it? It was tough. It was difficult. I struggled. I had to talk to my mind. But at the end of the day, I finished it. Now, if you're thinking that I walked away with the ability to control my mind at the end of this difficult ordeal, I did not. What I learned were 3 important lessons that will help me manage my mind. The first lesson that I learned was that my original definition that fasting may help with the mind was slightly inaccurate. It is not that I need to control only taste. I need to control all my 5 senses. Our mind is managed by 5 senses. Depending on what you feed your 5 senses, the mind responds. So depending on the type of TV I watch, it can either result in true education or violence. If I listen to gossip, can it induce jealousy? We know that caffeine can induce anxiety. If I smell a skunk, I'll run away. If I smell perfume, I'm more likely to go towards them. If I touch my wife's hand, I could have a potentially positive outcome. But if I touch the hand of my neighbor's wife, well, you can all imagine what would happen. So, controlling the 5 senses is important. The second important lesson that I learned was I had to have a strong internal desire to complete my fast. So how do we generate internal desire? If you're the type of person that thinks of simple disease, we now have data that anger can actually increase your chances of having a heart attack. We now have data that stress can affect your immune system such that it can increase the progression of other diseases. And a simple thought, such as having a purpose in life, can add years to your lifespan. If you think more introspective, and in terms of latent diseases, ask yourself, one could be a great executive, but if they got impeached, was it because of their lack of knowledge, or was it an internal desire, like lust, that got them there? One could be incredibly wealthy, but if they got imprisoned, was it their greed that got them there? One could be an incredibly beautiful model, and if they committed suicide, was it because of jealousy? So lesson number 2, to have an internal desire to eradicate our latent diseases is extremely important to be successful. The third lesson that I learned was the need for having rules. My mind would often play tricks on me. Why don't you puree your food and drink it? Why don't you spread out the 15 bites throughout the day so it's not as difficult? Rules are extremely important. Think of it as running. If you try and run with flip-flops, it's very hard. If you try and run with shoes, it's easier. Shoes are binding. They restrict. Flip-flops are a free spirit. But it is the shoes that are going to help you move forward. So the 3 lessons that I learned was manage the 5 senses, have a strong internal desire, and employ rules. Now let us apply this to the real-world setting. We all had a desire to be here today. We even paid money for the tickets. But how many times did we check our cell phone? You know, if the organizer said, we'll give you $100 for every time you listen to a talk without your cell phone, we could all have done it. Because we understand the value of the $100. We would have the internal desire to get the $100, but we could have employed rules by turning our cell phone off and being successful at getting the $100. The second example is of the Stanford prison experiment, where they took 24 subjects and split them up into 2 groups, 12 as prison guards and 12 as prisoners. They were given the right desire in terms, all these people volunteered for the study. They were given the right attire, clothing, batons, and the fake cell. This was an experiment. This was all fake and just acting. What ended up happening was in just 3 days, the prisoners started believing that they were ill. They believed that they were true prisoners, and the trial had to be stopped early. It was meant to last for 14 days. It had to be stopped in 6 days. Just thinking or imagining changed their behavior and the outcome. Since one of the key messages I'm giving is what we feed our senses affects our behavior, it is important that I end with a positive example. In a rough neighborhood of San Francisco is Visitacion Valley School. The kids there are exposed to guns, violence, and that affects their performance in the classroom. What the school did was 15 minutes twice a day of transcendental meditation. All that means is freeing the mind. That simple 15 minutes intervention resulted in an 80% reduction in suspensions and a significant improvement in academic performance. So if 7th and 8th graders, 15 minutes twice a day, can block out external stimuli and have such a great improvement, can we not control our senses and our mind to change our lives? Let me leave you with one parting thought. There's two types of people in this world. Some that get managed by their mind, and some that manage their own mind. The choice is ultimately ours.